a scripture. It says here in John 6:27, do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life. And then a little further down, verse 29, Jesus answered, the work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent. So just want to encourage you guys with that today. In terms of math, we're going to go ahead, and today's lesson is going to be what I call a quasi quiz. All right, quasi quiz. So here's how it's going to work. There's 12 questions. It's review from what we did yesterday with the properties, and then also what we've been doing the last week with like the PEMDAS, the order of operations. When you have just the numbers, and then also when you have to plug in the numbers. So out of those 12 questions, I'm going to do 6 of them, and then I'm going to give you a little hints on a few of them. You're going to do the whole paper, so you're going to do all 12 questions. You may use your notes. You may also ask me questions. However, you may not get help from anyone else at home or from any students in the class or anything like that. So you're on your own for the quiz, but you can use your notes, and you could ask me a question and I'll help lead you in the right direction. I won't give you any answers. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. This sheet, I'm also going to send you a document of this. Okay, so there'll be a document in your Google Classroom assignment of a blank sheet like this. You can print it out and do your work on this. Or if you don't have the capability to do that, then you can do your work on a separate sheet of white paper, which I'm going to do today. Okay, so number 1 on our quiz here, which is expressions. What's the value of the expression 6 plus 5 times parentheses 8 divided by 2 to the second? So I'm going to go ahead and write number 1. All right, so this is one of those PEMDAS problems where we have to think of please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. We also call it the order of operations, right? There's a correct order in which to do a math problem. So P, we do our parentheses first, so that's 8 divided by 2, which will give us a 4. I like to keep that in the parentheses. That helps me. We're going to drop this little 2 down. That's an exponent. We're going to drop this multiplication sign down, drop the 6 down, drop the plus down, drop the 5 down. So the neater you are on these, the more of these you'll get correct. Okay. Next stage, parentheses. So the next step, we go right back up to the top. Are there any parentheses? No, it looks like there are, but that doesn't count because there's nothing we can do inside there. So next we have exponents. 4 to the second. We talked about this yesterday. That means 4 times 4, or 2 of these things, right? 4 times 4, which is 16. So I'm going to go ahead and copy down my problem, but I'm going to put a 16 here. Okay, next step. Parentheses, nope. Exponents, none of those. Multiply and divide from left to right. Yes, we do have a multiplication. So 5 times 16, I'm going to come over here and do that here. So I'm going to copy down my 6, my plus, and then this part here gives me an 80, because 5 times 16 is 80. And then our last step would just be 6 plus the 80. So our answer for number 1 is 86. And then you would go ahead, and if you have this sheet, you would over here, you would write 86. Okay, if you don't have the sheet, then you'll just leave it there circled. All right, that's number 1. All right, number 2, you're going to do on your own. It says which expression is not equivalent. So not equivalent means not equal. So which one of these is not equal to 216? Okay, so 6 to the third, well, that would just be 3 6s, right? Kind of like what we just did up here. So that would be like 6 times 6 times 6. So you'd have to find out what that is. You'd have to find out what that is over here on this one. 6 to the second, you'd have to do before you multiplied because that's exponent. So you have to take care of this first and then multiply. And then over here, 3 to the third times 8, the same sort of places that. And then once you find out which one of these is not equal to 216, you'll pick that one. All right, number 3, we're going to do together. So it says for questions 3 through 4, evaluate the expression below when x equals 8, y equals 3, and z equals 11. All right, so in this case, I'm going to go ahead on my separate paper and write down I'm going to write down the problem. And then over here, it tells us, if you look over here in the problem, it tells us that x equals 8. So I'm going to put an 8 over here. It tells us y equals 3. So I'm going to plug in a 3 for the y. And it tells us that z equals 11. So I'm going to plug in an 11 for the z. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and do the problem. So once again, it's a PEMDAS problem. This time I'll just look at this PEMDAS up here because it's so close. But I start with my parentheses. So we got some different things going on inside our parentheses. So to figure out what we do first within those parentheses is we still follow that order of operations. So in this case, we got a minus and then we have an exponent. So because the exponent comes before addition and subtraction, we have to do the 3 squared first within those parentheses. So we're going to copy down our 11, copy down our minus, and then 3 squared is 3 times 3, or 9. Copy down the rest of the problem. Next up, P, parentheses. Okay, so 11 minus 9 is 2. Don't forget to copy down that plus, because if you don't, it might look like 2 times 8. But make sure you bring that plus down. It's 2 plus 8, and 2 plus 8 is 10. So there's our answer for number 3. Okay, number 4 you're going to do on your own. Just be careful when you plug these numbers in. For instance, like when you plug in the 3 for the y, make sure that's not 93. Make sure you know that that means 9 times 3. Same thing with this would mean 5 times 8. And then you'll have to follow your order of operations carefully. Be careful when you get to addition and subtraction here to move. Remember, they're a tie. So when you get to addition, subtraction, move left to right. All right, number 5. This is what we did yesterday. Determine which property is being used. Okay, Anesis asked yesterday, she said, Mr. Hussey, can we just write down the number and show the work? Do we have to write down like all the words? And my answer was, yes, you can. Just make sure you show some kind of step or process so I know you know what you're doing. Okay, so on this problem, if we look back yesterday, there were some properties. Now in the notes, I gave you a situation like this where it was like P plus R equals R plus P, and we changed what we call the order, okay? So 12 plus 5 equals 5 plus 12, so that's called the commutative property of addition. And then you had one down here called the associative property of addition, where there were like 3 things, P plus R plus S equals P plus R plus S, but the thing that changed here was the grouping, okay? So the associative property deals with grouping, the commutative property deals with order, even though I just put 2 here yesterday. In today's example, there are 3, 16 plus 7 plus 9, and they changed the order. Okay, so I'm going to put here, there was a change in the order of numbers. You'll notice that this side here, well, 7 plus 9, that's 16, right? So 16 plus 16, this gives us a 32. And then over here, 7 plus 9 is 16, and 16 plus 16. So both sides give us the number 32. So you can show your work here on your separate paper by saying something like a change in order equals commutative. So a change in order is commutative. All right, so in this case, in problem number 5, we changed the order in which the numbers came, but they both still gave us 32 on each side. So this would be the commutative property, and since we're dealing with the adding symbols in here, the pluses, that would be the commutative property of addition. All right, so you can see I just wrote down A, I wrote down the answer, but I also showed a little bit of work, and my work here was to define the commutative property, which is defined on based in a change of order, okay? So when you guys get to number 6, which you'll do on your own, I would suggest you look back at this sheet from yesterday where you took notes on properties. And if I were you, I would put these sheets in your notebook each day, just like we were in class. So I would clip these in and keep an orderly notebook. All right, now on the back, we have 6 more problems. This first problem, number 7, that we're going to do together is a PEMDAS problem. So I think I'll just work off here for now. Okay, so I'll write down PEMDAS. Remember, that means parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division are tied, so you move from left to right. Addition and subtraction are tied, so you move from left to right. Okay, so in this case, there's no parentheses. There are some exponents. Okay, so 2 to the third. Let's think about what that means. That means 3 of these things. So it means 2 times 2 times 2, or 3 of these things multiplied together, I should say. So 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, right? And then 4 times that last 2 is 8. So we'll copy everything down. But then in that last part where we just did the 2 to the third, we'll put the number 8 instead of what we had there. Okay. So in the next step, we've done parentheses, we've done exponents, so now we have to multiply and divide. So multiplication is not better than division. They're tied, so whenever there's a tie, we have to move like you read a book from left to right. So in this case, if you move the pencil this way, the first one you hit between the tie is 87 divided by 3. Okay, so we got to come over here, do 87 divided by 3. And you can see that the number 3 goes into 87 29 times. So we'll copy down the 28, we'll copy down the plus. For this part here that we just did, we'll put the number 29, which is right here, right? Then we'll bring down our dot, and we'll bring down our 8. Okay, so our next step, there's no parentheses, no exponents. There is a multiplication and division. It's this one right here, multiplication. So we'll do 29 times 8. And I'm getting 232. So this part right here is 232. We'll bring down our plus, we'll bring down our 28. Okay. Then the last step, some of you guys may be able to see this in your head, but if you look at the ones placed, the 8 and the 2 fit well together. Okay, so that's like 8 more than 32, so 40. So that's going to give us 260. Okay, you could also just go ahead and add that up the old school way, one on top of the other. There's no problem doing that. Okay, so the answer for that one's 260. Okay, now on the next one, number 8, which of the following expressions does not have the same value as that statement up there? So the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to solve this statement and see what you get, right? Then what you're going to have to do is go do each of these problems. So you might need to use some extra paper. You might be able to squeeze them in this area here. I'm not sure. but you probably need to use some extra paper and take a picture of that too when you turn it into me and see which of these does not have the same value as this. So keep, be patient, work hard. If you get one, if you get like they're all the same, then you know you did something wrong. Okay, so you go on and do it again. On a problem like this first one, just make sure that before you can divide by 4, first you have to get something up here. So first use the order of operations to get one number up here. Then once you have one number up here, you can divide by 4. Okay, so this is using the PEMDAS, the order of operations on problem number 8. All right, problem number 9 and 10 are similar. They give you a formula, and you're going to have to plug in some numbers and see what you get. So let's take a look at like number 10. All right, you'll do number 9. Let's take a look at 10. It says to use the formula V equals LWH, that means volume equals length times width times height. When they're next to each other like that, that means to multiply length times width times height to find the volume of the rectangular prism below. All right, cereal box is called a rectangular prism. That's the shape you call it. Substitute the appropriate numbers for each variable and solve to find V, the volume. All right, I'm going to come back here to this paper. I'm going to write down number 10, and then I'm going to write down the formula they give me, which is V equals LWH. You might want to make sure that you know that means L times W times H. So you can do it in the parentheses. You can do it with the dots. Remember, that's an L. And that's not a 1, that's an L. So now we're going to go to our problem, and they're telling us that it doesn't really matter like which is which for length, width, and height, as long as we make sure that one of them applies to each of them. So I call this the height personally. I would call doesn't really matter. I would personally call this one the width and this one the length, but if you called that the length and that the width, you're fine as long as you stay consistent and you always call it that. So in this case, I'm going to plug in my numbers here. So the volume equals, for L, I put L as this one. That's an L. So I put L as this one, so I'm going to plug in a 4. And that's 4 inches times W. So I put the W as 1. So that's 1 inch. And then my height, you can see up there, is 8.5 inches. Okay. So I have 4 times 1 times 8.5. Okay, so 4 times 1, so these two here, well, that's just 4. And when you multiply inches times inches, that actually becomes like inches squared. And we'll talk about this in a minute. And then I still haven't touched this 8.5 inches. So we're going to have to bring down the 8.5 inches. So now we have 4 times 8.5. So we'll go ahead and down here. Remember when you have a decimal, you put that in there, and then you just multiply it like regular. So 4 times 5 is 20. Put the 0, carry the 2. 4 times 8 is 32, 33, 34. So we'll put down 340. And then because that decimal came in once from the right-hand side, so it kind of went in once like this, like one loop, then here we'll have to come from the right and loop it in once. So our answer is 34.0. All right. So it's 34.0 inches. And when you do like an inches squared times an inches, you actually have to add the exponent. So it's like 2 plus 1 more, which is 3. So 34 inches to the cubed. So 34 inches to the 3rd power, or inches cubed. Okay. The way I think of it with these inches squared and inches cubed is I think of it like this. If we have a 3-dimensional figure, length, width, and height, then when the whole thing is over, when the whole problem is over, it will be to the 3rd power. if I had like a two-dimensional figure, like say I was painting the wall in a room, right? So I was painting this wall behind me blue, then I'm just painting the surface of it. So that's like a two-dimensional figure, length times width. So your final answer for that one would be, instead of to the third power, it would be to the second power. So when you're dealing with ones like this, like number 9, it's going to deal with an area of a two-dimensional figure. That will be to the second power. When you're dealing with ones like this, that's going to be to the third power because it's a three-dimensional figure. So volume has 3 dimensions, and then surface area, they call this like surface area. Here they'll probably call it area, but what they mean is surface area. That's two-dimensional. All right, so you'll do number 9. If I went too fast on any of that, you can stop and rewind it. Okay. Number 11 and 12, you'll do 11. 11 is a PEMDAS problem, just like I said on this one up here that you'll have to do. Just be sure the same thing here. Before you divide anything by 2, just make sure you take care of the entire top and still follow that order of operations, all right? But take care of the top before you divide it by 2, all right? And then finally here it says, which of the following represents 5 to the 4th in expanded form? All right, so the base, they call this one here the base. So I've been saying today, like, you have to take 4 of these things. And then I said once something like, to be more specific, you have to take 4 of these things, the bases, and multiply them together. So in this case, 5 to the 4th means 4 of these things. So it means 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. So your answer for that one is going to be B. Okay, and you can show your work through doing this. All right, guys, so today's a quasi quiz. By quasi, I mean kind of a quiz. So you obviously got half the problems right just by doing them with me. And then you're going to do the other half. Hopefully I gave you enough little tips there to help you. So do your best on that quiz. Pass in all 12. Take a picture of the front. Take a picture of the back. And then upload it to me on the Google Classroom assignment that I'm going to post. I'm also going to post a blank template of this in case you need the blank template of the quiz. And thanks for your time today, guys. God bless you. Have a nice day.